Hey guys, in this video, we're going to talk about denaturalization and the IRS, guys. This is a very difficult discussion to have with you, but we need to have it. You need to be prepared by understanding what the government is working on and how it could potentially impact individuals in the very shoes that I'm going to discuss in this video. I'm Latoya McBean Pompey, an immigration lawyer working with clients nationwide at McBean Law, where we believe in immigration freedom. Type in freedom now, guys. This is going to be a raw, unscripted. Yes, we're going to edit some parts of this, but it's going to be unscripted because I'm really going to have a very real discussion with you about what the government is working on. So bear with me. Denaturalization is a top 5 priority of this government. In a memo that the Justice Department issued on June 11th, it named or identified the top 5 civil enforcement priorities of our Justice Department, and denaturalizing U.S. citizens is one of the top 5 priorities. And I've discussed with you in the past that the government plans to beef up its denaturalization work on the civil side, which means that there is no statute of limitations that would restrict the government from bringing a civil action against individuals to denaturalize them. It could have been for an offense or a problem that occurred 15 years ago or 10 years ago. It doesn't even matter, because under the civil process, the government can bring a denaturalization action against an individual based on the grounds that I've discussed with you, which are primarily based on the procurement of naturalization illegally. And then the second ground for denaturalization, friends, is based on misrepresenting a material fact during the naturalization process. Now, you might be saying, well, okay, I've seen all of your videos on denaturalization. I have a general idea of how it's going to work and what the government is looking for and all of that. But what in the world does the IRS have to do with this? What does tax records have to do with it? Well, friends, the memo that the Justice Department issued indicating that one of the ways that they're going to go after people for denaturalization is based on financial crimes that they've committed against the United States. And this includes tax problems, tax violations. The new priorities include financial fraud against the United States, explicitly listing tax violations alongside Medicare and Paycheck Protection Program fraud. The memo also targets fraud against private individuals, funds, or corporations, marking a radical expansion from historical practice where authorities reserve denaturalization for Nazi war criminals, spies, and terrorists, Ahmed Abbas wrote in a very thoughtful article on this topic. What the government is looking to do is expand the number of people who they can sweep under the civil denaturalization process. The journalist Abbas goes on to say that the implications for America's nearly 25 million naturalized citizens are profound. The IRS estimates that tax underreporting costs approximately $500 billion annually, as millions of Americans make errors through forgotten cash income, misunderstood deductions, or calculation mistakes. Under the new guidelines, any naturalized citizen who made such errors before obtaining citizenship could face denaturalization if they failed to disclose them during the naturalization process. So now your next question is, wait a minute, how did I fail to disclose this during the naturalization process? Well, I'm going to pull up the N400 naturalization application, and we're going to look at part 9, question 15A, which asks, have you ever committed, agreed to commit, asked someone else to commit, helped commit, or tried to commit a crime or offense for which you were not arrested? Yes or no? That is the major question that the government is honing in on for denaturalization purposes. Have you ever committed any crime or offense for which you were never arrested? And so when you underreported your tax in your income to the government and you were never arrested for that, yet you answered no on the naturalization application, and now the government finds out that you underreported and said no on the application to them during naturalization, and here you have it, a denaturalization case against you. It's that easy. And so, friends, the IRS comes into play now because the DHS, as you guys know, is trying to get access to IRS data. IRS data has become so valuable now to the Department of Homeland Security for the purpose of finding folks, right? They recently submitted a request to the IRS with 40,000 records that they're seeking for addresses and such. And the IRS came back and said, well, we matched less than 3%. And then next thing you know, the IRS commissioner who Trump appointed is out, and he is now the ambassador to Iceland. And The Guardian is reporting that one of the reasons why he's out is because he refused to allow the administration to go any further with penetrating into the data that the IRS holds, because the IRS have very strict privacy rules. And although they're willing to share some information with DHS, apparently the former commissioner wasn't willing to go even further and break the law by exposing more information to DHS that they were seeking. And so there you have it. There's this great demand by DHS for IRS data. It's very well possible, I'm speculating here. My husband and I were talking about this very issue today, and we were both speculating, wondering how in the world is the government going to do this? What are they looking for? How far back are they going to go? Well, we know the IRS holds on to records for, is it 10 years in some cases? Then it's 5 years in other cases and 3 years under certain circumstances. And then if it's fraud that's involved, well, maybe there's no particular timetable that's associated with fraud and all of this. More research certainly is needed, guys, by me with respect to how long the IRS holds on to our data. But what we were discussing had to do with, well, how will they now find the immigrant or the naturalized citizen, in which, of course, there are 25 million of them? How will they dig through those records and pair them up with some sort of crime or offense for which they were never arrested? So we talked about what's plausible here, and what's plausible certainly is by limiting the scope of the initial inquiry into the data. For instance, my husband made the point that, well, the more recent data would be the more accurate data to go after, because information is so much better today than it was 10 years ago, right? The ability to capture information 10 years ago is different from what we can do today. So start with the more recent records and see what you can find. And then I put on my immigration attorney cap and I said, well, during the green card process, the government always asks the immigrant, let us know the last 5 years of your employment history. It doesn't require that the immigrant had been paying taxes during those 5 years. No, not at all. It just wants to know what your history has been like. Certainly, if you've been paying taxes, fine, great. But if not, they didn't really drill down on that. Not during the green card process. Fast forward to the naturalization process. Of course, they want to know whether you're up to date on your tax payments. Of course. But are they asking during the naturalization process that you must have paid taxes before you became lawful in the country? No, they're not doing that. If on a green card application, they saw that someone had been working during a certain period of time, and yet they tap into the IRS database and records and see that maybe that person didn't report their income during that time, is that the circumstance or fact pattern that would lead them to put an individual now in denaturalization? God forbid, right? We were sitting there thinking about the worst case possible scenario in terms of how the government would actually do this. But back to the article where Abbas makes some very compelling points here. He says, during naturalization interviews, Applicants must answer whether they have ever committed a crime, even those the government never charged. Years later, a forgotten tax form or unreported tip income could emerge as grounds for losing citizenship. The civil proceedings offer limited defense options, creating lifetime jeopardy for pre citizenship conduct. Nearly 25 million naturalized citizens comprise roughly 7% of America's population. No statute of limitations exists, and prosecutors enjoy broad discretion, meaning that every naturalized citizen who has ever made a financial mistake before becoming an American faces potential denaturalization. Friends, in other words, the government will be looking at pre citizenship conduct, pre naturalization conduct, your conduct before you became naturalized. That's how they would connect you to question 15A of the N400 application and try to strip naturalization away from individuals. We've got to take a deep breath, right? Because if it's conduct that happened after you became a US citizen, you will not lose your citizenship based on conduct that occurred after becoming a citizen. It's what happened before you became a citizen that matters to the government. And there are other areas of denaturalization that the government is prioritizing, and I'm going to get into those in other videos. Stay tuned for that information. But for now, you should know that the government is prioritizing denaturalization, and they'd like to see data from the IRS to be able to do some of the work that it is gearing up to do. My husband made an excellent point. He said, of 25 million people, there is absolutely no way they could go through all of those records. And I completely agree with him. Let's take a deep breath, be informed about what's going on, and be sure to share this video with others. Comment below, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel before you go today. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.